Okay, real question. How many of you guys have had a fire hackathon idea and then spent maybe 12 hours fighting your own code? Yep, that era is over. Today, you're not here to code. You're here to direct. You describe, and AI builds. This is what we call vibe coding. And guys, let me tell you, like the best part of all of this. If you understand this properly, you can outbuild people who you think are 10x better engineers than you. The people who are in the Bay Area, people who are doing all these crazy things that these big companies that we hear and see about all day on LinkedIn, and we feel like we can't be there at their level. But we can do all of that in half the time with less stress and way better demo. So let's get straight into it. Today, we're going to be covering some vibe coding tools for you to use, especially in tomorrow's global build challenge that Socia is going to be hosting. We're going to go over this sort of mindset shift that you have to like prepare yourself before you start planning, before you prompt. And then we're going to go through your first build and talk through, things breaking, context, and debugging, because we all know AI loves hallucinating. It doesn't work perfectly in the first shot, but it's just that perfection kills progress. The progress is what comes with a good prompt. And then we'll just go over some tips and tricks that we've come up with. So, right, this is the highest leverage skill in hackathons right now. Not coding faster, not knowing more frameworks. It's knowing how to tell AI exactly what to build, right? And vibe coding is simple. You don't write code, you describe what you want, like you're explaining to a very fast, slightly overconfident 5-year-old. And it builds it. The people who win now, not always the best engineers. The people who win are the ones who have better ideas, more creative taste, and just better ability to convey their instructions. Today, I'm going to show you how to do exactly that. Right now, you guys have an unfair advantage. These tools that you see on screen here are basically cheat codes. You can go from idea to working app in hours, not days. Right? So just take a look at all of these codes here, all of these tools here. Can you just throw some reactions if you've used one or more of these tools? All right. You guys have been using these tools a lot, so you guys are the perfect audience for this session. Right? Let's talk through a few of them, and let's see where they actually fall into your use cases. So Bolt is the fastest way to go from prompt to app. This is something that we saw explode on LinkedIn, alongside tools like Replit and Lovable, which is a full-on coding environment straight in your browser. We also have Cloud Code, which is probably the strongest overall. It sits in your command line interface. Very technical jargon there. But for those who want something a bit more simple, or something that sits right in their laptop without them having to set up much on a terminal, you have Cursor, which gives you something like VS Code or a normal programming interface, but with an LLM on the side. It gives you full control, and it's very, very powerful. We have Windsurf, which is cheaper, but still very, very solid. And then we have Copilot, which was the first entrant to this industry. Everyone knows Copilot. We've seen it in those sort of useless emails that unis start to send out with, oh, join the Copilot. But GitHub Copilot is actually getting very, very smart. It's something we should not be ignoring. Now, it's just important to note that for tomorrow's hackathon, and for really any hackathon that you're coming up with, or you might see in the future, or perhaps a project you might want to work on, all these paid tools also always have free tiers. So it's important not to disregard that. Get hands-on, try all of them, see which one you like. A matter of an hour or two, that'll save you days and days on end, right? And if you have access to OpenAI's Codex through your university or through your company or through anything, you're basically playing on easy mode. Don't overthink tools. Pick one, start building, and you realize the bottleneck is not the tool, it's how you use it, right? Go to the next slide. The mindset shift, I think, is arguably the most important part. You become the architect. Your role changes. You don't become the coder. You're the architect. The AI builds. You decide what gets built. At hackathons now, we're seeing that product sense, i.e. product management, or coming up with creative, flavorful ideas, understanding the problem and the pain point, is really beating out that raw coding skill. People who learned to code weeks ago are winning over people who've been coding their entire life because they think better. And if you're experienced, you become truly dangerous because your knowledge turns into better prompts, which turns into better output, which turns into an app that can then get sold for $40 million, $50 million at a VC or any of these companies that we see funding these sorts of ideas. A quick thought that many of you might have seen on LinkedIn, there was this app, I think it was called Cal AI, just one of those nutrition pals, something people said could be vibe coded in a day. The founder exited that for $100 million. It's interesting to think where we sit in 2026. We're not sitting in 2020, we're not sitting in 2016, we're not sitting in 2020. It's completely different. So 2 rules I would really like to give you guys here. Be specific and set constraints. And for demos, fake it. Hard code results. Judges care about what works, not about how perfect it is. Now, I want you guys to just do this with me in the chat right here, right? Write a 5-line microspec. What, who, for, 1 core interaction example. Right? This is where most people mess up. They open the tool immediately. Don't do that. First, write a tiny plan. I'll tell you what I like to do. I go to ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, whatever LLM you might have been using for for random things. Some people ask LLMs for mental health advice. We've all been, but go to the LLM, tell it, okay, I have an idea. Give it a name, give it a tagline. Tell the LLM what it does in your mind. Describe it in 1 or 2 sentences. It doesn't matter if you have grammatical issues. It doesn't matter if you might not speak English too well or Arabic too well. Put it in whatever language. LLMs are designed to assist you with that. Tell it what it does. Tell it who it's for. Okay, I want to build a tool that helps university students, that is undergraduate university students, plan their courses before registration every semester. And then give it 1 example. This tool will look at their course plan, their major, and will come up with the best courses for their next semester based on their prerequisite plan or whatever it's like. Put that into ChatGPT and put a prompt at the end. I want you to come up with a big, massive prompt that I can take to a code or vibe code tool, and please generate a PRD and a build prompt. Tell it, plan first, review the plan, fix it, then build. This 1 step can save you hours and hours of chaos in terms of direction, in terms of coding management, in terms of tool choice, also just refining the product that you want to build. Because now you're setting the foundations before you start building. Much like what we see in real life. When you start building a building, you make sure you spend hours, days, weeks, years on the base. Then you go on and start building above that. It's the very same thing here with the prompts. The first build matters a lot, right? The first prompt really matters a lot. Don't go step by step. Go 1 shot, full build. Tell it what to build, what tech to use, and what to ignore. Perhaps you might know what coding language you want to use. You might know what framework you want to use, what model you want to use. An example, right? You are a lead hackathon dev. Build an MVP of an idea, the idea we talked about in the last slide. Use React plus Tailwind. These are JavaScript and front-end elements. Give me a clean layout, skip the non-essentials, add a demo mode button with sample data. This is what we call hard coding. Remember what I said earlier, perfection kills progress. If you want to build something that's working end to end to end to end with all the integrations, oh, it has this API, that, this, that, it's not going to work for you in an hours. And when you have a hackathon that lasts only 10 hours, where 100 other people are also going to be building by your side, pressure is really going to start to build. So use the concept of a demo mode, which is really just hard coding results, a button that fills app with realistic sample data. These days, judges who are going to be evaluating the efficacy of the tool don't care about what integrations you're using or what else is being used on the site. They care about how the functionality works, what the flow is of your application. And I think nothing kills a demo faster than an empty screen once those integrations fail. And your hours of work, your days of sleep lost, just wasted out the window. I would say in 2026, and this has been proven, most of the funding that goes to the source of these apps is not really in the mainstream functionality they have, but rather in what we call the UX, the user experience. You want to make it obvious, you want to make it fast, and you want to make it understandable in 10 seconds. Now, I want to talk about when things break. I'm going to come back to the chat here. Can somebody, I want you guys to tell me, just drop a few lines in the chat. Tell me about when you were presenting something on stage or you were demoing something in a classroom and it broke. I just want to hear some of the examples you've lived through, and we'll talk about some of our own. I'll give you guys 10 more seconds and I'll share something pretty funny.
What can I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so Hello, everyone. I'll give you one of our own experiences. It's actually about Adam specifically. Hi, Adam. Adam is usually leads the development in our hackathons. And so one time what happened, this was about a year ago. It was when, Cursor was a bit new, like these vibe coding tools were just a bit newer. So, they weren't the best and there weren't that many workarounds. And so we were building an application for public speaking. It was coincidentally in line with better communication. And we were stuck with a certain part, which was like working on the Whisper integration, which basically allows you to convert your speech to text. And I got on call with Adam at like it was 7 or 8 p.m. and I wasn't noticing what he was sharing on his on the Meets call, but eventually I looked closer and he had set the same prompt 5 times in the same chat, and it was basically him just. It looked like he was like Cursor's project manager. He's like, "Why aren't you doing this correctly?" Yeah, basically crashing out. And so I asked him, I'm like, Adam, what are you up to? He's like, this is not working. I don't know what to do. I told him, why don't you just find the problem yourself? Look at some code, look at some error logs, take the error logs, put them into a different window, and then rebug it from there. And surprisingly, it worked. And the thing is, it's a very obvious thing on surface. It feels like I'm just saying something from like like a handbook. But when you're actually coding, or vibe coding at least, you kind of forget like the most basic things I noticed. And it's a very common theme across many people where you will be so hyper focused on one specific problem that you will forget that the problem itself comes from a bunch of other problems. And so you should go one step at a time.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take advantage of the fact that Adam isn't even defending himself here. See, a few months thereafter, there was many of you must have heard of TII. They had something called the Crowd Label Challenge, and Adam took the technical part there. I sort of did the ideation. We worked really well together. We came up with an idea. Some of you here were really supportive. You helped us with that. It was a Duolingo for Arabic that used images. It's called FlyQ. With that idea, we won the best idea in the world. Out of 2,000 applicants worldwide, we had the best idea in the world. And we were shortlisted for the top 10 to go to a public beta, where the winner would receive $50,000. $50,000. We lost because we got first place in terms of the number of prize we had to get, the number of usage we had to get. However, because we vibe coded that entire app, and we didn't give it the prompt, okay, we have to use this is the API, we have to use this is the tool we have to use. One line of code was missing a comma, and we lost all of that cash. But see, these are all experiences. These are all in the past. It's pretty funny, but this is what really happens, right? Things are bound to break, and things will break. And here's how you don't waste your entire hackathon. The big strap is just what Adam and what Say just described right now, which all of us have really fallen into, whether it's coding, whether it's just asking GPT for basic things. It's the prompt loop. It fails, you retry, it rewrites everything, it gets worse. Why? Too much context is worse output. Remember what I said earlier, GPT or any of these LLMs are like supercharged 5-year-olds. They can do anything, but their attention span or their context windows, if we call it, is very, very small. If you start giving it jargon and it starts messing up, it doesn't remember the initial instructions you gave it. It remembers the sort of the brain rot that's been producing in the past few cycles. Here's the rule. We call it the 5-minute rule. Try it twice. That should be about 2 minutes of writing a good prompt each time. This is like the first prompt you begin with. If it fails, stop, pivot. Checkpoint constantly. Save every working state. A tool like Cursor gives you the ability to restore to a checkpoint, i.e. you come up with something you really like and you start adding features and it goes into a brain rot context loop, right? You go back, you scroll up to that chat where you remember this, it was good at this point. You press the backwards arrow, it says restore to checkpoint. Saves every working state so that even if it goes in that window, even if you make that mistake, it happens. It happens on the end of a really long day, it'll happen. It'll bring you back to that idealistic working state from which you can pivot, you can restart, or you can add a new window to start. Fresh context. If it's not working, if perhaps it's your idea, or perhaps you deep dive too much, let it be. Leave the chat, start a new one with clean input that can fix faster. Don't fight broken code for an hour. Move. I'll pass the slides on to Sayed here.
Yes.
Yeah, don't fight with your broken prompt. It's like arguing with your toxic ex. Please laugh. Fine, it's fine.
All right. I'll go into something practical very soon because I wanted to actually show you guys some of the specifics on how to vibe code, like actually practical stuff. I feel
Can
like
you go presenter view? Say it, sorry. 3 buttons top right.
oh, yeah, I can do that.
Sorry for prompting you.
All good. Yeah, so I'll go into tips and tricks. These are like very basic tips where instead of going for a prompt straight on, you want to instead go into a plan mode. This could be within your agent where you're asking questions, so your GPT, or the actual coding agent. Usually, planning gives the agent itself a good span of time to actually think about small potholes within an idea, maybe specific use cases not matching up. There's something called rules files where you can set up a specific markdown file within your code base that keeps it strict towards specific rules. So maybe it's the tech stack. Maybe it's a certain thing where you're getting really annoyed by it making a button purple. It could really be anything. And yeah, so I'm going to share my screen at large right now. 1 second, just shift that. Just give me 1 second. Yes, I hope you guys can see my screen. Let me just get some thumbs up for that. Lovely. So, okay, here's the thing I came up with really quickly. I said, hey, so this is something we'd actually do. It looks kind of stupid, but this is what we usually do for hackathon, and we just do it in bulk. So I'll have like, let's say 3 or 4 things running. So maybe a Claude, maybe a GPT, maybe a Gemini, maybe an AI studio. So any kind of thing that gives you ideas. And I'll kind of dump the same kind of prompt into each one. Where what my main goal here is to kind of ideate, but also use PRDs. So I'll show you how that works. So I'll first start with the microspec. So if you looked at the slides earlier, we talked about microspecs. A microspec is just a very concise summary from everything from and then the use cases specifically. And it gave me this idea. Now, it might not be the best idea. You can read through it. It's a meeting translator that doesn't translate words, but rather translates emotions using, you can say, emotion models. And then it outputs a summary on how the general sentience, is that the word? The sentiments was during the call. So what the emotions were like. Was everyone happy? Were people confused? And I guess that could be useful for a business, maybe if they're doing a larger call. It could even be useful here if people are speaking. So I said, okay, give it this. So this is specific to the micro, what's called, to the micro spec. So the examples, the use case, the viability, and it gave me this out. So now I have a clear idea, and I can of course refine this. And if I don't want to if I want to change the use case, for example, I want to make it more corporate instead of being for a designer, let's say. If I want to change what it is, maybe I don't want it as a browser extension. Maybe I want it as an actual application, or maybe I want it as a web app. It could be really anything. You can change it. And then I asked it, okay, make me a product requirements document for this, and also give me a corresponding prompt for. In this case, I'm using Codex as my coding agent. It was the one at the bottom. And actually, Codex, if you are in, I believe it's Khalifa University or UAU University, it's free. So you get unlimited, what do you say, unlimited use. And I'll show you how you can get that done if you don't know about that yet. So yeah, I said, make me this. And then, and you can do this in GPT. It's not a Claude specific thing. But anyways, it generated me 2 things. The prompt itself. So it's quite a big prompt, and it's for the entire thing. Again, you can read through it, but I honestly just like seeing where the waves take me. And the product requirements document. So this is everything. It says
the actual problem it solves, the product itself, who would the users be, the scope. Of course, I mentioned that it's a hackathon, so it's kind of limited at scope. It says, okay, this Chrome extension activates only on one website. It hasn't put Zoom for Teams. It hasn't put anything. It just chose one, which is Google Meet. And of course, you can see here, it says it took lots of things out of the scope. It was like, you know what, this is probably not worth building for a hackathon. Because again, for a hackathon, you only have like, let's say 5 to 10 minutes max to present your idea. And so you're really going to go for quality over quantity. And that should usually be the case, but you want to really focus on 2 to 3 features max. If your app has 6 features and you have to present each one, I really suggest you just undo it and start from scratch, or go back to the 2 or 3 strongest features and work on them. Because you're going to confuse the judges, you're going to mess up, and you're not going to give those 2 or 3 features enough time for them to, you know, show themselves. As you can see, it's giving me the architecture as well. Yeah, just a lot of things, right? But that's really cool because now I have an entire guide for this, and I can basically, I'll show you how I can get it done. So what I'll do is I'll download this. Okay, and I'll open up, let's say for instance, I'm using Cursor here. Now Cursor is paid. You do have a free trial on it where you get to use the auto mode. But if you are, like I'm sure many of you here are from Khalifa University or UAU University, you can instead go here to extensions and then search up Codex. And you can do this in VS Code as well. It's not Cursor specific. I mean, they're both just the same thing, but one as an agent. And you click this one and you click enable. And then it pops up. Okay, let me just, it has a bit of an issue here. You have to kind of disable it, then enable it again, and then it pops up. Let's just do that one more time. There we go. Is it here? Oh, there it is. Nice. So now it's popped up. And then you connect it with your account. So this is my account here. And you can see it shows your organization. And now you have unlimited usage. So I can use whatever model I want as much as I want because the university is paying for it, which is really cool. So yeah, now let me show you what I'm going to do. So this project is empty. It's completely empty. There's nothing here. I'm going to drop that thing we just had. I believe it was here. There, this is the product requirements document. I'll put it here. You'll see this file comes here and now. So now, like, it's amazing because now your agent, whatever you're using, has an entire context to always back up on. You're not going to be, you're not giving it a fully open mind. You're kind of restricting certain parts of it, which is really good because constraints usually lead to, you know, a better output. So, and I'm going to take the prompt itself. So this is the prompt. I'll open it here. And I'm just going to take everything here. And I'll go into Codex back. And I'll just paste this. I'll just remove this start here. And that should be good. You can also add a file. So I will add the PRD, even though it's here, but I don't know how to drag it. And so like we mentioned, it's usually good to plan in the beginning. So even though we've already planned in Claude itself, it's always good to double check it. So I'm going to click plan. It takes longer, but it's worth the first time. And for reasoning, it's either medium or high. It really depends on how much work you want your models to do based off of what you have. If you like what you have, you can put this on low, and you don't even need plan in that case. And I'm going to go click send there. Let me just accept these people. I think there's like a bunch of people waiting. Okay, never mind. No one's waiting. So this is going to take a while. We'll come back to this later, but I just wanted to show you the workflow of how we usually go. One thing to note is that I haven't covered ideation. And if we're talking about hackathons, ideation is probably 10 times more important than the actual building, especially nowadays. So let's see. So which diarization should I build? Let's go for, I honestly don't know. I'm going to go with the recommended one. Live capture, yeah, why not? So it's really nice. Another strategy here is we'll go into that more into depth, but another really cool strategy with prompting is if you have an idea and you're not really sure if it's fully done, you go here and you ask it, okay, I have X idea. Keep asking me questions until you have a full scope of what to build. And so what's really nice is that you can come up with nothing. You can have nothing initially, and it's going to ask you about specifics. So, hey, do you want this to be a web app? Do you want this to be a web? So anything you missed out on, possibly, maybe even I missed on some, maybe I missed out on something here. I can ask it, hey, can you ask me questions to refine this? So I can do it right now. I can say, are there any things that I'm missing? Ask me. So yeah, that's a really nice iteration because yeah. So we'll let this cook in the background. It's going to take a while, I'm guessing. So let's go back into the slides. I believe it's this one. Yeah, so that's one tip and trick. That was like a big walkthrough. So it kind of covers the entire thing. And we have this little quote in the end here that we always use. Fake it till you make it. And it's even more real nowadays. Like we noticed in some of the biggest hackathons we've joined, and actually especially the biggest ones, as long as people don't end up checking the code, the judges, which in most hackathons, no one's checking any code. Maybe they'll skim through it, but it really doesn't matter. Every winner has something that's hard-coded, and sometimes the winners have everything hard-coded, which basically means they have nothing really running. So for example, we had a hackathon where we built an AI data scientist, right? And we actually tried our best to make everything work, right? And it was really nice. It was like 6 stages, and there's like one agent that controls 6 agents, and they all do the thing in parallel, and then they all give you a result in the end. But when we were watching the presentations, there were about 16 teams. We noticed at least about 7 or 8 of them had their stuff hard coded. So it wasn't even stuff that was running. It was just stuff that was done beforehand. Like they knew that was going to work. And it's a smart idea because if we're being realistic, if the hackathon is not looking for full on technicality, you can kind of just shimmer your way through it and say, hey, this is not working, but of course this can work. And if you gave us like 2 or 3 days, or sorry, 2 or 3 weeks to build it. So you can use hackathons to your advantage and say, hey, we didn't have that much time, so we've mocked this, but you don't have to mention it, like if they ask you, of course. And many times they don't ask. So that's a very good advantage that you can use there. And that's what we tried to kind of convey here. Instead of changing this and making everything perfect, you can just say, hey, this is failing, just replace it. I think, yeah, that's it. I guess we'll have a Q&A now. We'll go back into the codex thing once it's done. I'll just wait until it finishes, and we can go through that and kind of show you how we debug behind the scenes once we're done with the Q&A. Yeah, go ahead, Mohammed.
Hello, Sayed. Thank you for your presentation.
Of course.
Just have a question. Here, not all of us have access to Codex or to Unis
Yes.
because not all of us are Uni. So I was wondering, like, usually when you are in a paid subscription, you would have a limit for your tokens.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think we can build an app or like vibe code an app while still not going over the limit, like making sure we always stay within the limit? What tips would you have for that?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the coding itself, I think it's kind of worth it to end up paying a bit, because sometimes you have to think about the return on income. Let's say I'm paying $20 for Cursor Pro, right? I get almost unlimited auto, right? And I get full control over my IDE. So you compare that to any other free tier agent, and you realize how much more work it is, how much more you have to worry about the costs of this and that. And then, as I mentioned, the return on income, if I pay $20 and I end up winning a hackathon and I win, let's say, even if I win $50, let's say that's the prize, then you've already made that back, you know, and you've paid, let's say, 2 months for Cursor Pro. So it really helps to pay. But if you're stuck with free, then I guess you have these four choices. I mean, when I wasn't paying myself, I was usually going to something like I mentioned, like Claude or GPT, getting a PRD, getting a prompt. So instead of me having to iterate on these free tier apps and waste their credits, I'm gonna do all the ideating, all that kind of stuff. I'll be doing that and something else that's maybe unlimited. Like, to say GPT is somewhat unlimited, and if GPT finishes, I'll take it to Claude. If Claude finishes, I'll take it to Grok. If Grok finishes, it's like there's always a backup, right? And then once I'm really sure of my plan and I have this PRD, I have a very good prompt, only then I'll go into one of these free tools to use their coding ability. I mean, even sometimes in GPT and Claude, you can ask it to, hey, I want some code. Can you make me like base templates or base files for these for this idea? And then you go into these free tools, and then that's like the best way to kind of avoid the limits. Because otherwise, yeah, if you're going back and forth with code and you're going back and forth with ideating as well, you're using the coding tool for ideating, which is fine, but in the free tier, it's kind of costly.
Yeah,
Yes.
makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, Beetlejuice, you can go.
Hey guys, what's going on? Sorry about the name. I
All
entered
good.
with my wrong email.
All good, all good.
So I was going to ask about if you ever built like a large scale project.
Yeah.
That included deployment and authentication and stuff like that, like a full stack development type of thing, instead of a hackathon project, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, the scope of this is only for hackathons, but of course I can go into that. Yeah, we've definitely developed lots of applications and web apps and whatever for deployment. If you want to know what we use, is that what you're asking? Like what we use exactly, or any tip?
Yeah, because I found it a bit hard to do full stack development because, like you said, the AI loses context and starts messing up.
Yeah. I mean, I usually find that easier when you're trying to integrate different things. So of course there's deployment itself. And what I recommend for that is Vercel. It's free for many deployments, and it's good for web apps. If it's for databases, let's say, again, the easiest there will be Supabase.
Yeah.
And yeah, those are usually the only two things you need. Sometimes you might want to upload if it's like a full stack, you might want to have a backend running. For that, you can either use Heroku, you can use, I think Vercel also has its own backend thing where you have to pay a bit. But
workers, right?
Yeah, workers, yeah. They have their own workaround backend where they have nodes running in Vercel. But yeah, if you want to deploy something, you can always just go to GPT or Claude. You can give it your entire idea and then ask it, hey, what is the most optimal way to deploy this? Because if you're going to ask your coding agent, it's going to work. But again, you want to keep your contexts away from each other to make sure that you're making the best use of each tool. And then you just
right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Of course. Any more questions? Oh, I see another raised hand. Yes, Khaled, you can go.
I kind of forgot of my question.
You have anything to ask right now? Let's say I put you on the spot.
Wait, I'm trying to remember my question. Let the other guy who has his hand raised go, and I'll remember it in the meanwhile.
All right. Yes, Mohammed, you can go.
No, it's all good. It's fine. Thanks.
Of course.
Okay, I remembered my question. So, how do you deal with like implementing something that doesn't have clear documentation when using Cursor or something?
What does that mean exactly? What do you mean by documentation specifically?
Like documentation, like examples. So, when Cursor has to implement something like a framework or a tool, it searches up its documentation. So if the documentation isn't clear from the framework itself, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so there's actually a really nice way around that. I actually wanted to go into it, so that's kind of nice that you mentioned it. Yeah, so there's MCP. MCP is amazing. MCP stands for Model Context Protocol, and what it basically is APIs for agents. So we're used to integrating APIs ourselves and accessing different tools from APIs. So let's say it's a weather app. I want to get the weather every 10 seconds. Instead of doing it manually, you can let your agent interact with an MCP. So actually, I can show you. 1 second. Yeah, so there's MCP, but I want to first go into something a bit more simpler. There's something called skills. So for stuff like Claude Code or for Cursor or whatever you're using, you can have skills running. And skills are nothing but text. That's all it is. It's just a bunch of text. Skills come in the form of markdown files. And you can imagine it's like if you're really smart in a certain domain, you make a file and then you keep giving it to every project you have so that it always refers to your knowledge instead of going to the web completely. So let me just show you my screen a second. So for instance, Rust is something that, or Rust and a couple of languages like this, there's Go, there's a couple others. They don't really run, like if you ask it to code in Claude, they don't really run that well. You know, you kind of get issues and you get outdated code, mismatched versions. And so I just searched up Rust skills. You can, in case it doesn't show up, you can say Rust skills for Claude, for instance. And then you get these like, there's different websites for it. Let's say I take this GitHub one right here. And so in this right now, there's Rust code that I can basically just take this entire skill. I can import it into my code base, and it's going to just refer to this directly for Rust. I'm just trying to find the actual, so skills. And so it has so many skills just for Rust. We have, I don't even know what these are, I'm going to be honest, but they're all Rust related. And all I'd really have to do is import this skills file into my Claude Code or Cursor skills file, and then it can just revert to this. And to add skills, there's like ways to do it in every single one. So it's really neat with skills, and MCP is almost the same thing. So for MCP, I just say Rust MCP for Claude, or it can be anything. It can really depends on your use case. And you're probably going to find an MCP related to like this, and you'd be able to do your tasks much easier. So for instance, there's this one here as well. This is another one. This is a Rust coding skill. So you can see it's literally just all text here, but it's giving it specific advice on how to code with Rust specifically. So all I do is just install this and then put this into my file and use it. So this is one way around, what was it I mentioned? One way around stuff that doesn't work out when you're coding.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add something actually?
Yes, go ahead.
I was facing a similar issue. For example, like coding, there was one library that the documentation was not that great, but community using that library is quite, I would say not big, but like of a medium size. So yeah, some of the things, like specific things that I needed to do can get confusing even with the documentation. But one thing I found helpful was like you need to do sometimes your own research yourself
100%.
through the communities, through different solutions, through like similar case problem. And sometimes when I give these similar cases or for Claude, for example, it was able to solve it after it saw like the problem there. So yeah, sometimes, especially when the documentation is not that good, I would suggest do like your own 15 to 30 minutes research through the different communities and hopefully find like a similar solution or like at least a first step for you or for Claude to go ahead and solve the issue.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're talking about something specific that maybe an agent doesn't have too much access to, there are skills, there are MCPs, but at the end of the day, your own research can definitely be more useful than anything agentic. Any more questions? All right, I'll wait like 5 minutes if anyone has any more questions, and then I guess we can wrap this up. The thing is still building. It's been building for 13 minutes. So I guess I'll just wait until that finishes. We can share the results afterwards if you guys are curious about what it built in the past few minutes.
Sayed,
Yes.
I have a question. What was
Go
the
ahead.
coolest thing you've byte coded like in under 30 minutes?
Under 30 minutes.
Like at least a demo like of something.
That's a tough question. It would probably be these slides. Because we didn't make these slides actually. We just, so I'll show you what we used. What we did, I basically just used Claude and I dumped my ideas onto Claude. I said, hey, can you make me slides for a session? I have these ideas. Can you put them into a nice format? It made me a PowerPoint. And then I took that PowerPoint, I put it into Canva. Canva has an import feature. And then within Canva itself, I edited like the designs a bit, but the format itself is kind of what it gave me. It just made it more personalized. I think that's pretty cool because this wouldn't look, vibe coded at all. I think it looks pretty. The design is very human, like. So I found that pretty cool. I didn't think vibe coding and design was that good for a very long time, but we're starting to see it get better lately, for sure. I also wanted to give one more tip. Actually, maybe I forgot it. Let me see. Yeah, no, I did forget it. I think we'll end the session there then, guys. I'll share these slides with you if anyone needs on the chat. Just give me 1 second. Let me upload them. Ooh, I remembered. Okay, so one more tip I have is one we use a lot. So it's about having template projects. So what I do suggest if any of you join multiple hackathons, is to have one project where you have the very basic UI setup. So maybe it's a React UI just set up on a web app, and maybe some basic UI and some basic buttons, some basic fields set up, so that when you go into a hackathon, you don't have to start from scratch. So you don't have to build an entire PRD. You can tell your agent like, hey, I already have a template. I just need a PRD to develop on top of the template, and you can send it screenshots for it to give you the PRD on top of that. And so we actually use this a lot and it kills like all the time of, hey, how should this look? What should we use? And all like the around 5 to 10 minutes of it building just the UI itself. And you can actually focus on the functionality of the app and the user experience, the user flow, stuff like that. I've shared the slides in the chat so you guys can give it a look if it works. Oh, we have one more question. Ideally, how much time should we spend on ideation, prototyping, testing, and iteration to be creative, but still finish a working solution? This is usually something that you build over time. It's not something that's fixed for everyone. But if you look at them comparatively, it's always most on ideation. So for instance, if there is a 6 or 7 hour hackathon, I personally would spend 2.5 to 3 hours on ideation, plain, and maybe 3 hours on dev. Or if there's a team, you have 2 people or like most of the team working on ideation, while the 3rd or 4th person is already working on a very base template, maybe a very base UI, that once your idea is done and it's like very solid and everyone loves it, you checked it against maybe certain references or certain competitors, then you just give it to the guy and he just builds it. So ideation is always... no, we actually didn't go over how to decide an idea. I think we'll put that into another session because actually we should have done an ideation session before this, but we'll go over that. This one's just over vibe coding and how to take an idea into code mainly. And then yeah, prototyping is also really important. Testing is also really important. It's a bit less. And iteration is in every single stage. Iterations within the idea, the prototype, and the testing itself. Yeah. What matters a lot in hackathons as well, one more thing on top of these 4 stages, is just the creativity. And what I like to call it is the superficialness. So many ideas that win hackathons aren't really full-on realistic ideas. Actually, most of them aren't. That's why they don't go into development or production after the hackathon. They're like kind of fake. Like some of the parts are very crazy. But I think that's the whole point of a hackathon. You're kind of going into this creative realm where you're just kind of showing the capabilities of what could be possible in, let's say, a month or 2 or 3 or 4 months with how fast technology is developing. So it's good to include a bit of superficialness, a bit of how is that possible type of thing. So that's another thing we also always go by in hackathons. Guys, can you just give me a thumbs up if the link in the chat works? Lovely. Okay. So one more question. It says, how can one make a good mobile app with stunning UI and animations? That's a pretty big question, but like how I'd go about it is I'd first find an application that does something similar. I would download it on my phone and I would use it, like I would run through it. Then I would go to the stuff I like. I would screen record or screenshot. I take all those screen recordings, all those screenshots. I would go into Gemini. Gemini has the best visual context, so it's the best at understanding design. I would dump it all into Gemini. I'd say, hey, I want to build an application for XYZ. I have this application that I downloaded that does XYZ. Can you extract, let's say, the most important things about the user experience, about the animations, about the UI, about how the layouts work, how the texts are, the fonts, the colors as well, and the theme. And then it would give you like an application, and then you can use that to develop your application and do this entire process from ideation to lab coding. For video generation, are you talking about? If it's for video generation, then I think Gemini is probably the best right now. I know ChatGPT recently closed their video thing, I believe. So I think Gemini is probably the only good one. There are other ones on like Hugging Face, but they're a bit more complicated to run and they're a bit inconsistent at times. Will the meeting recording be shared on the group? Yes, we'll share it. We'll share it to all of you guys by email if we need it. What do you suggest to a person who's fairly new to coding and wants to participate in hackathons? This one's a little fun answer, is just join one and just start coding, you know? It sounds a bit daunting and a bit scary, but the realistic thing about it is that I think most people who started coding and most people who started joining hackathons just kind of did it on a whim. There are people, of course, who came in with experience, but I personally didn't have much coding experience. I just kind of joined my first hackathon. It wasn't coding related by chance, but eventually, with how easy vibe coding was, it was much easier to code. You just go to GPT, you say, hey, I want to make this, and it makes it for you, you know? There's also stuff like Replit. I'm sure you've heard of Replit, REPLIT, and Lovable as well, where you can just make entire ideas within the platform. They're the ones we mentioned here. So these are some of the easiest ways to kind of start these platforms on the left-hand side, because they kind of just do everything for you. Everything beyond that, you can learn at your own pace. What is the Global Build Challenge? We have a challenge, or like somewhat of a hackathon, happening tomorrow, starting tomorrow in about 22 hours. We have the registration opened up until the end of today, so you can still register. And we have $1,000 in prizes, and it's basically just building for our theme of better communication. And we're gonna go more into depth during your session tomorrow. So feel free to join. Any more questions?
I think there are no more questions, right? We shall wrap up the session. Thank you so much, Sayed, and thank you so much, everyone. We really enjoyed to have you in our session today. And always remember, today's session was directed by the Socia team. And finally,